Hi everyone, this is Abel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a ton of really interesting fantasy and science fiction books I want to talk about. We have reading updates, we have reviews. This is going to be great. Let's get ready. But before we start, remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, share this video. Thank you. The first book I want to share with you that I really want to talk about is The Voice of Kings by Matthew de Lacey. This is one of those strange, serendipitous occasions when I find something really interesting on the X platform. I see a cover, I see the beautiful color with really vibrant, really saturated, the nice typography, the classic nature of the illustration, and I say to myself, this is interesting. And then I click on the link and I see the description and I see this is 1059 pages monster, just the first book of a really epic series. And yeah, I got even more attracted to this story. And yeah, I read the description. It says, and I like the fact that it puts on the forefront a really nice and interesting internal struggle. Because awkwardly enough, but in a very unique way, it doesn't tell you much about the overall plot. The description is all about the internal conflict of the protagonist, because it says that he is a witness to something that happened to his father, on the minds of his father, and when he saw something supernatural, a big power that actually exists somehow, and what happened nearly killed him or his father. I'm not sure, but the nature of the thing that happens is so strange that people around him, they don't believe that actually happened, and that kind of supernatural power actually exists. And he has this burning desire to prove that what he saw is actually truth. What he doesn't know is that that kind of power is really sought after. It says that kings and queens will kill to actually get to put their hands on that power. And that's really interesting for me. There's also another a sentence of the description that I really like that says, a true knight who would die for it, an opportunist who would nurture it against sage advice, a person of empathy would not care to touch it, and if only to protect innocence from the others, a courageous person might embrace even them. So he has this really nice internal conflict, and I want to see how it actually interact with the rest of the story, with the characters, with the themes, with the world building. What I've seen in the description, even if it is so little, it is really interesting for me. And the fact that the story is so expansive makes it even more interesting for me. Even if I'm a slow reading, I don't know why I do it to myself. Because when I embark in a story like this, it takes me literally months to finish it, and my TBR is never ending, and my library stares at me and judges me because I'm starting a huge tome when I have pretty short and sweet books there waiting for me. I don't know. It is what it is. Anyway, I wanted to check it out. If you have read this, let me know, and I'll let you know when I read it, actually. Another really big book, but there's a catch, is the God and Jean Trilogy. This is a bind-up, a collection of the whole trilogy, of course, and it says that this edition, that it's a paperback edition, is around 820 pages, contains the 3 novels in the trilogy, Trials of a Tyrant God, Pawns of a Cruel God, Heralds of a Fallen God. And it says that it has exclusive world-building notes, and the philosophy behind the whole series, new cover art, and original covers. So yeah, this is the kind of paperback book that will fit so well on my library, so well. So I was interested in the series when I heard about it. I think a couple of months ago, or maybe last year, I watched an interview with the author and I told myself, this is interesting again. But this edition makes it even more interesting for me because, of course, you know, I am that kind of crazy and I love huge books, and the fact they're all binded up together actually pushed me to read the whole trilogy at once instead of reading the first one and then waiting months or years before reading the second one. But let's see what the actual story is about, shall we? So the description says that this story is a grim, dark story, but set in a post-apocalyptic future, so it should be a blend of epic fantasy, but in a setting that it is struggling with the consequences of a huge conflict that's reshaped the face of the world. And it says that humans have powers because the gods give them powers, but at the same time gods draw strength from those humans, and there is this enormous, really huge conflict between gods, and humans are probably caught in the consequences of that conflict, and they're maybe heroes, maybe pawns, maybe victims of that kind of conflict. It is really interesting because you may or may know that something like that is going on in my own novel, and I really like to see how other authors tackled similar themes and similar concepts. So yeah, I'm going to give it a try, absolutely. And if you have read this, let me know. I'll check it out and I'll let you know as soon as I read it. Then I wanted to mention a space opera series. We have 3 books out and one is coming out soon. It's called The Lazarus Man Agenda. This is the name of the series, and the first book is The Lazarus Man. And the concept is pretty straightforward, pretty comforting if you like space opera. It is about a man that goes on in a very trivial way. He does a life that he doesn't really like, a really menial job, it says. So he doesn't feel fulfilled, but he witnesses a crime, a really bad crime, so he's forced to flee. In the moment that he flees, he gets in contact with this shadowy organization called the Lazarus Man. In the description of the first book, it doesn't say exactly how that organization works and what they want, but the protagonist he finds himself in possession of a specific artifact that has this incredible power. And at the same time, in the description of the overall series, it says that in this Lazarus Man organization is led by a man that it is immortal. So yeah, that's intriguing for me. And it starts on Earth and then it expands on the broader scope of the galaxy. So yeah, I'm really intrigued because you know how much I enjoy space opera, and I'll tell you more about a specific book that I hauled a few days ago. And yeah, let's see how this one goes. Really interested. If you have read it, let me know, and I'll tell you more as soon as I read it. Again, another series that I found on the Twitters, on X, which is the basic resource for me to find up-and-coming fantasy and science fiction authors. This is special for me because not only the cover, they all look amazing here. 5 books by A.M. Knight. The series is called Union of Men. But it also sounds really special because the author is planning to release the whole series, all the 5 books, in the span of a couple of months, starting in April and ending in June or July. This is a crazy schedule, and I hope it really, really works. It could be an amazing splash because releasing the book back to back in that way could also really impact the algorithm on Amazon, and starting that cycle where the reviews and the attention for a book fuel the attention on the previous book. It's a risky move, but I think it could work really, really well. So the series is about a epic 5-part series about the unions of two nations and continents that have to put aside their struggle and their ancient feuds to fight an ancient evil, a bigger threats against them. And that is really interesting because, you know, and when you have to put aside your personal interest to fight a greater evil, that makes for interesting cultural and internal struggles, and I want to see how it actually works for the characters of this story. We have seen many epic fantasy story where the actual real threat lurks on the background, and we actually would want to scream at the TV show like Game of Thrones, or scream at the pages to tell them the real enemy is outside, is there, is waiting for you, and you're actually serving them the victory because you're battling between yourself and you're wasting your time when the actual real threat is there outside, and you should work together. And I think that this kind of concept should be explored in greater detail, so I'm really happy that someone is actually doing it. And the first one is it's called The Freeing of the World. It says that a generation to sacrifice freed the world, but everything they've done could be undone if the king remains incapable of getting an heir. Classic conflict right there. And then it says a kingdom risk being divided, plots are hatched to find a successor, and desperate people gamble on across the forbidden ocean. This is the first part of the first installment in the 5-part series. As I said, really love that. And to be fair, I like the covers too, because they're from Jeff Brown. He never misses. Everything that he touches becomes gold. Really epic, really beautiful. And yeah, I may or may not have been granted access to the whole series on paperback. Probably. Maybe, surely, I don't know. I'll let you know more about this. But yeah, I'm really intrigued, and I want to know what it is actually about when it comes to the characters, you know, because I'm a character reader. So yeah, I'm really intrigued, and if you have heard about it, let me know, and I'll absolutely let you know more about it when I read it. Another really promising and epic-looking series that I found on, yes, you guessed it, on X is the, I'm going to butcher the name of the series, the Altidike Chronicles. The title of the first book is The Storm Beneath the Glass by Robert Wyatt and Todd Larsen. We don't have a specific release date for this one, but I subscribed to the newsletter because I want to know. I'll keep an eye on this series. That sounds incredible. The cover, of course, is by Jeff Brown. You know my opinion about everything that this artist does, and yeah, it makes it really interesting. And I like the fact that we have two protagonists that are brothers, two princes. And if you have seen my reviews about The Curse of the Mistbride by Janny Wurts and The Wars of Shadow and Light, the first book that I've read, you know that the kind of dynamic between two brothers is really interesting for me. And it says that those two princes are in a place, in a kingdom that has enjoyed a long stretch of peace, that has been thriving for the last couple of centuries, but there are prophecies of this ancient evil brewing in the background. Yeah, it's a common trope, but it always works because it pushes characters in impossible situations, because it forces them to bring out the best of that they can, or the worst that they're capable of. And the situation changes, the shifts, I think, the incited incidents, when they are strained away. They're severed from their origins, from the place that they have been living in for the most part of their life, and they have to fight this ancient evil and at the same time to try and return to their origins, to the place where they come from. So yeah, I'm really curious about this. We also have the title of the second book, but we don't have a cover, and as I've said, I'll keep an eye on this because I'm really, really attracted. I've seen a couple of videos on the X account of this joint venture of those two authors, and it looks like they really know what they're doing. So yeah, I'm really interested in this. If you're curious about it, let me know, and I'll absolutely let you know more about it as soon as I read it. Okay, let's do reading updates. It's been an amazing weekend for my readings, because I come from a really difficult time. At the end of the year, I finished The Curse of the Mistwrite that actually destroyed me. And it took me weeks to recover because it was so dense and so demanding of a read for me, because of the writing style and because of the huge scope of the story. And if you sum it up with the fact that I was on the cusp of releasing the arc of my own novel, The Crimson Fire, so yeah, I was exhausted. So I actually read very little during the month of January and a little bit in February, but then I restarted and it got really better. And I give you a review of the first novel that I finished in a bit. But if you look at my Goodreads page and see what I'm actually reading, you'll find a ton of books, because I realized that the best way for me to get in shape again and restart a nice vibe and rhythm with my readings is to take bite-sized pieces of novels until I find the right one that it sucks me in. So I'm actually in that stage. When I'm reading a little bit of many novels that I'm interested in, there's actually only one that I'm actively reading with all the others, and when I'm several hundred pages in. So the first one that I'm biting and chipping at a little bit is Molten Flux by Jonathan Weiss, that I'm loving because I'm loving the main characters. And because I'm loving the aesthetics of it. It's a nice genre blend of science fiction, post-apocalyptic fiction, and fantasy. It's absolutely recommended for me, even if I haven't finished it yet. I'm really reading Stone and Sky by ZS Diamanti because I'm approaching the second novel. This is a classic epic fantasy story, sword and sorcery, that resembles Dungeons and Dragons, and actually the aesthetics of the movie Honor Among Thieves. I think it's really, really fitting, and I'm loving it so far. I'm also reading Sleeping Words Have No Memory, and I can tell you confidently that this might be one of the best novels that I'm reading this year. I'm actually enjoying very much the concept of this huge tower, which is something that we can relate as a culture. It is embedded in something ancestral in our mind when we have this huge construction, because of the biblical, of course, references and of the historical elements that mix with legends about this huge tower. So the idea and the visuals and the aesthetics of it are really strong, but the best part of, at least until of the amount of pages that I read, is the voice, the writing style, the choices of words and then sentences. This sounds really strong. And if I'm not wrong, this novel is an expansion of a short story that won an award a couple of years ago. And I can see why, because it is very, very well written with a strong authorial voice that makes it really, really unique. And then I'm reading Chosen of the Dark Realm by David Cornford. This is an arc that the author very kindly sent me, and I'm really enjoying it. The atmosphere, at least in the beginning, it has that desert setting and a treasure hunter that has to accept a really, really dangerous job because he really, really needs the money because he's starving. And I like the mystery that surrounds that first POV. At the point where I am, another POV has been introduced. It has really nice dynamics and powers. And then I'm reading The Black Mantle by Andrew Watson. And you know that I loved Harbinger of Justice. And also Silence and Silver. They're very good. It's a very good novel and a very good novella. Actually, the novella I loved even more than the novel. And by reading just the small amount of pages that I've been reading of the Black Mantle, and I can tell you, this one, the second novel, is going to be a masterpiece. I know, I can feel it, because I'm actually seeing the way Andrew Watson is growing as an author, and everything that I enjoyed and that I loved in the first book, that I wanted more, is actually more in this one. It is so much deeper, so much character driven, and so much emotional and impactful. And the world building is so interesting, and the dynamics of the culture and the way they are interwoven with the plot. It's incredible. It's actually giving me the same vibes that I got when I read Berne by Brandon Sanderson, which is actually my favorite series by Brandon Sanderson. I know everybody loves The Way of Kings and the Stormlight Archives more, but that's not me, okay? And yeah, this is really promising, and I can't wait to read more. Then I'm reading Heliotrope by Palmer Pickering, and I'm loving Taleo, the protagonist. The more I read about it, the more I love it. The interaction with his cousin and the interaction with the boy and the girl that he's trying to protect. And the interaction with the animals, with the horses and sheep too, which are actually kind of characters too. It's really weird, but really lovely. I'm loving it so far. Then I just started A Dragon of the Veil by Nick Snape. And I'm confused, but in the best way possible. This is the kind of story that throws you in the action, doesn't hold your hand, that you have to figure it out what's going on. But I am intrigued, because I can see that the character, especially the point of view that I'm following right now, it's really fleshed out with an interesting backstory and an intriguing trajectory for his character development. The writing style is really snappy, action scenes are really energetic and really cinematic, so really loving it, enjoying it so far. And yeah, I have started The Ships of Merior by Janny Wurts. This is the second book in the Words and Light in Shadow series. The edition that I have, this is the second book, but I know that US readers reading this on hardcover, they have a single volume that encompasses this book that I'm reading and the other one. So basically, the UK edition, the book was too long and it's been split in two volumes. So I'm reading the first half of the book. If you're in the US, you'll find the book with a different title, I guess, that has two novels that I have in two small paperbacks here. And yeah, this one is 700 pages long, the first half that I'm reading. So I can fathom how long it is the original US version. So yeah, and the small amount of pages that I've read are actually better of the first book that I really, really loved. It was one of my favorite books of the last year. And then I can tell you that the writing style is still dense, it's still really peculiar, and in a few ways hard to read. It asks you to pay so much, to put a lot of attention in it to make it work. But on a thematic level and on a pure enjoyment of the writing style, this is top notch. I have never seen anything like this. And yeah, I'll let you know more about it as soon as I finish to read it. Reviews. I have finished my first book of 2025 because I've told you it was so slow of a beginning for me reading Weiss, with a very, very good science fiction books, that is The Europan Deception by Ryan M. Patrick. Now, I was graciously allowed to read a e-arc for this book. I was supposed to give beta feedback, but me being so slow and being so overwhelmed by commitments and my own writing, it took me literally months to finish the book, to the point that I finished reading this first installment in this series when ARC copies were floating around. So no beta feedback, but a review. And I'm really happy I got to finish this like the first book of 2025, because this is incredible. This is a really good science fiction book. So if you have a hole in your heart that has the shapes of the 9 books of The Expanse, this may very well fill that hole, because it is that good. So imagine the political scheming that we had in The Expanse with the character of Christian Avasarala. And we have here a character which is a man, that is a army man, an overseer of a specific branch of the government that has infiltrated agents. So it is a space story, basically. And then we have 2 protagonists that are younger, that are 2 undercover operatives. And we see them, all of those 3 main points of view, going on separated storylines until they eventually merge. And you see the larger scope of this huge conspiracy. You see both of those younger agents being framed for things that they haven't done, and them deciding how to face this kind of situation and trying to understand what's actually going on, who's trying to frame them, and what's the origin, the actual gist of the story, what's going on. It is very well done, very smartly paced, with very nice dialogues and incredibly good hand-to-hand combat, very cinematic. I was in the scene, I was on the edge of my seat, and I was asking the same questions that the characters were asking. I had all of the same question marks on my mind. And I really love the fact that Patrick was able to take all that we really love from political thrillers, like, for example, Tom Clancy's. There is an homage, because the name of one of the characters, it is actually Clancy, and I think it is an homage to Tom Clancy, that with all of those kind of conspiracies, spying, and backstabbing, and placing it in the larger scope of a future when humanity has actually colonized many planets outside of the solar system too. So you see, the classic, if you have seen the Winter Soldier from the Marvel universe, and you see them hopping from city to city with the name of Berlin and all the other cities there, you have the same here, but you have Mars, and then you have Earth, and then you have Io, and then you have other colonies, and then you come back to Earth. There is a lot of travel in like a 007 way, but on a huge scope. And you see how it is really interesting for me to see how humanity actually changed a little bit by colonizing those worlds and those satellites too. But at the same time, we are always the same, because you see the consequences of how those colonies works and their relationships with their with the cultures from Earth. So you see that many countries from Europe have specific colonies, countries from Africa, they have specific colonies, and other places are under control from the US, and they all look different, and they all work in a different way because they're heavily influenced by the culture where they come from. And they have difficult relationship with the colonies and the original countries. And you see at the same time the unfolding of this huge conspiracy to see why they were framed and what's underneath the all of the weird incidents, because there are a lot of violent crimes and a lot of things, really bad things happening they're trying to understand. I love the dynamics of a huge political thriller on this huge scope that really reminded me the best moments of the politicings of The Expanse. But it goes on a different direction, because the underlying theme of The Expanse was how we actually can influence in a positive way the life of others just by touching them in a positive way. But it was all framed on a first contact story with an alien civilization. This one goes on a different direction, because the conspiracy that is lurking underneath is really different, and it has roots in the myth of Atlantis. Because in this world, the future world that we see in this novel, Atlantis, was real, and it actually influenced the technology and the future of this story. I will say that this influence is really superficial in this novel because we have hints of what the connection actually is. And that's maybe one of the few negative feedback that I have about it, which is minimal. This is a 5-star stories for me, okay? It is that the moment we realize the origin of the conflict and of the political scheming and the conspiracy, it is a little bit underwhelming because we discover so little in this novel. And it is all relayed by dialogues, by bad guys spilling out what's the origin of this conspiracy, that I thought we were going to get more. And I think this is made on purpose because this is supposed to be a pretty long series, so I imagine we'll have more in the sequence novels. But I wanted more. I wanted to see more of the origin of this, because we have multiple instances when the bad guys, they see you're not ready. I cannot tell you the truth. I cannot tell you why we're doing this. There's this ominous atmosphere of impending doom, but it remains just sketched out. We don't have much to go for, and of course the story resolved in a really satisfying way because the conflict gets resolved at the end. The main gist of the actual conspiracy gets resolved there, so it is satisfying as a story is in and of itself. But the underlying current of the trajectory of the series, I wanted a little bit more. Another thing that I didn't gel specifically were the way characters were developed. So these are those 3 main points of views, very capable persons. They're all at the top of their game. They're extremely effective. So their conflicts are not in a evolution of their ability, of their skills. They're all internal. So each of one of them have to deal with the consequence of something that happens in the past, and they have to come at peace or decide how to go on in their life after that, after those internal conflicts that shaped their past and their actual present. So I like the fact that the development is internal. It is emotional. They have to try and understand how to act in the future, because the more they dwell in the consequence, in the aftermath of those incidents, let's say, the worse they get inside, because those conflicts, they chew them in the inside. So it is nicely done. One of them gets to a resolution faster, the other ones are a little bit slower. The things that I think that they didn't work that much is that those conflicts, they were spilled out in dialogues and a little bit in internal monologue in a very linear way. I thought there was space there to convey those information in a more elegant way, in a more deeply impacting way. In many instances, for example, it says that Clancy, which is one of those characters, was dealing with negative emotions, was overwhelmed by negative emotions. And I get what the other was trying to say, but it sounds a little bit superficial, because negative emotion, it's a pretty broad term. It can mean many things, and we actually see what he is trying to say by the way the characters act, but it always stays on a superficial level, which works in the context of the story, which is very fast-paced and very action-heavy, with big ideas, but I wanted more. By the nature of the story, I think it works effectively. As a character reader, I would love to have a deeper exploration. And this is reflected a little bit in the dialogues too, because this is one of those novels where a lot of the backstory and the lore, it is conveyed by dialogues. And a few times I had the feelings that those information needed to be conveyed to us in those dialogues, and there were no other ways to explain us what was actually going on. So it's like the nature of the story was a little bit at war with the characters and with the characterization of the characters. But I will say that this is a me problem, probably because of the kind of stories that I really enjoyed. Because those kind of internal dialogues and character development, for example, in The Expanse, were much more nuanced. Because the more the story progressed, the more you saw internal growth in the characters. But the first book was already pretty accomplished on this one. So I'm pretty sure that here we have space to improve on that, and that we'll probably have more and more in the in sequence volumes of this story. And it is well done. It could have been executed a little bit better for me, but it wasn't bad per se. Okay, it wasn't anything that hindered my ability to enjoy the story. Okay, so give it a try. The author is actually giving ARCs copies before the release of the book, which is in April, I think. So if you want to read this one, you can read it right now for free, okay, and give the author feedbacks and reviews. So give it a try. Absolutely recommend it. 5 stars. Go and read it right now. Okay, let's do a little bit of a book haul. You know that I try to highlight indie authors as much as I can, because I think that I know how difficult it is to get a little bit of light on under the spotlight and to market their books. And this is one of the reasons I decided to jumpstart this channel, because I wanted to highlight fantasy and science fiction books, indie books, but not only. And many of those authors have decided that they wanted to give me e-arcs, so ebooks, and I really appreciate them, and you know how much I try to focus on them. But a few of them had the resources to send physical copies, so paperbacks, and a few of them also hardcovers. But that's expensive, so few of them are actually able to do that. So when they do, I feel compelled to show off those books because they look so good. And one of these is Wistful Ascending by G.C.M. Berne. This is a science fiction story that has been described as a superhero story in space. And this has undergone a small redesign, because it had a different typography. The illustration is by Chris McGrath, which is a pinnacle. It's a pillar of the SFF genre. So you've seen covers by this illustrator for Brandon Sanderson and Jim Butcher. So all the covers are amazing. But I have to say that this redesign, the typography here, I think it works better in the context of the genre of the story. And it says on the back, the spectacular start to the opening arc of the space opera series everyone is talking about. So this is the first arc of a very long running series. I think we have 4 or 5 stories in this first arc. And it says the overarching story is Hybrid Helix Platinum. And it says that the Eildrach have conquered half a galaxy behind the civilization-ending powers of their mixed species children. Half-human Rohan, exhausted by a decade fighting for the Empire, has paid a secret and terrible price for his freedom. Now tired, he strives to live a quiet life, towing starships for the space station Wistful. His most pressing problems are finding the perfect cup of coffee and talking to a gorgeous shuttle tech without tripping over his own tongue. A nearby, long-dormant wormhole is opened by a ship full of scared, angry refugees, and the many eyes of the Empire focus uncomfortably on Wistful. As scientists, spies, and assassins converge, reverting to the monster the Empire created is the surest way to protect its friend, and the surest way to lose them. So I like when the main protagonist is kind of a jaded one that really just wants to have a quiet life with an extensive backstory, which could be really sad by what the description says, but then they are forced to come back in action. And yeah, it looks very good. It is not that long. It's around 390 pages, 395. So it looks incredible. And I have heard just amazing things about. The reviews are really good for this one. And yeah, if I enjoyed this one, I'm pretty sure I will have a long-running series ahead of me. As I've said, many volumes of this one are out, and let's see how it goes. I'll let you know. And if you have read this, let me know what you think about it. Then I was graciously offered 2 review copies by author Peter J. Aldin. Oh, by the way, if you want to see unboxings for this book, just look at my shorts here on YouTube or my reels on Instagram. The first one is Exclusion Zone. This is a novella set in a vaster universe, which is the Envoys series. And it says, outnumbered and outgunned, her ship destroyed, her backup days away, and the only place to hide is the most feared planet in colonized space. Private Westerman's bad day at work just became the worst day of her life. High-stakes action-adventure from the author of Fierce Contact and Eventide. This looks really promising, and I think that you cannot find this edition, which is one of the last copy of a Kickstarter that the author did. You'll find this novella with a different cover. Okay, I'm really proud to have this really rare edition. But what prompted me to get in contact with the author was another book. Because, of course, the cover was designed by Jeff Brown. I wonder how this artist would feel if he knew he's been mentioned so much in my channel. Am I stalking the guy? Probably not. But this is a very different story, of course, by Peter J. Aldin. This is an epic fantasy story. See how beautiful the full wrap illustration is. This is really epic. The kind of cover that actually sells the book by itself. It is how many pages long? Around 400 pages, and look how floppy it is. I like this kind of paper and this kind of paperback. Then they give you that kind of really comfortable experience by reading them. Love it. So let's see what it's about. And then I think I've talked about this story. It's one of my previous videos. So it says, even the lowest have much to offer and much to lose. As monstrous horde of Trell curve bloody swords across the southern nation of Olage, northern Cardolan quietly reveals in their neighbor's downfall, until the Trell appear and their own borders. Good riddance. The fate of both countries now rests on the shoulders of 2 unlucky heroes, Eric Hodegold, and the other one is called Presh. So they have to trot the Troll Scourge. These traditional enemies must forge an alliance, relying on a ragtag band of soldiers and sorcerers to face enemy, raising everything on their path. I like it. Enemies to friends, it's a good trope. So yeah, I love the cover, I love the internal design. It is very nicely formatted, and I'll read it pretty soon and I'll let you know what I think about it. And by the way, this is going on you'll find this on Kickstarter. There is a Kickstarter campaign to funding the publication of this book. So let's give it a try. I'll let you know what I think about it as soon as I finish it. And then the last review copy that I have received recently, I will haul more books that I bought by myself because I wanted them, is The Wall by Brian Penn. Let me see if I can find an angle to show you properly the cover. Yeah, the lighting is so bad. Okay, Brian Penn. This is a dystopian novel, and I have the pleasure to meet this author. No, he actually contacted me. For once, I wasn't the one stalking the author. And this is a YA dystopia that really reminds me of those nice tropes that we really love when we talk about the golden age of dystopia around 2012, and it says he could live forever, but is he willing to pay the price? It's 2099, and the former United States of America is the midst of another civil war. In the wake of a revolutionary technology that grants people a second chance at life, an impenetrable wall divides the prosperous nation of Zion from the slums of Middle Land. Stuck inside the wall and desperate to reunite with his fiancée, contraband smuggler Usher is hell-bent on finding a way out. I like the concept. I told you a little bit about this book in one of my latest videos. So there's this technology that grants people living inside the walls of this utopia to live forever. And it looks like there's a very hefty price to pay for living forever in that utopia. And that the people outside the walls are really not happy with it. And there is this romance subplot between the protagonist and his love interest is trying to reunite with. And I like the concept. I like dystopians, and I like the fact that it is pretty sweet and short and sweet. It's around 250 pages, so I think I will be able to finish it pretty soon. I'll let you know what I think about it. If you have read it, let me know. And by the way, this is the first in a trilogy. Book 1 and 2 are already out. The third one should be out pretty soon, or was published fairly recently. So the series is complete if you want to give it a try. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you for being here for the entirety of this very long video. If you resisted until the end, you're a hero. You're my heroes. Thank you very much. Remember that you can still ask for review copies of The Crimson Fire, my debut novel in the US and the international market. We have e-arcs by following the links. You can ask for one, and I have a small amount I will have pretty soon a small amount of physical ARC copies of paperbacks for you too. So if you want one, just write me an email. And by the way, I'm saving this small amount of paperbacks because they're really expensive, as I told you, just for people that will be able to review them around the publication, because I have to pay really hefty fees for the shipments, and I'll be very eager and grateful to actually send out gifts and review copies after the publication, but it will be easier and less expensive because I can use Amazon Prime as a means to gift copies. But by now for the ARCs I have to pay for myself, and given that I'm based in Italy, the price will be huge. So if you want to review them, thank you. But if you want to do it, you have to be sure to be ready and review those around the publication dates. And if you have an Instagram profile and you have social and you're active on social, that's a plus, because I need you to show off those copies, okay? But if you can wait, let me give you and gift you a copy of those books after the publication. It will be easier. And yeah, I think that's all I got for you today. Remember that if you enjoy science fiction and fantasy books, this is the perfect place for you. So if you want to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing, leave a like, and share this video. And if you want to see more videos like this, I have one right here, right now. It is very good, it is very funny, and it is really interesting and filled with amazing books. Thank you for being here again. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.